Joining us live now is the Assistant Treasurer and the Financial Services Minister, Stephen Jones. Minister, good to see you. Thanks for your time again this morning. So, IMF, the numbers are 4 in 10 economies will see a recession. Again, that's the numbers for the IMF. Jim Chalmers, and to be fair, Josh Frydenberg as well, talked down the chances of that happening here. But is it becoming more likely now that we will see one here?
Oh, look, we're not hermetically sealed from what's going on in the international economy. Our major trading partners in a precarious situation, deteriorating quickly. You talked about China, Europe, the UK and the US. Of course, that's going to impact us here in Australia. Major source of markets for us, but also in the case of China and Europe, a source of inputs for our supply chains as well. So right. Yes, Pete, in short, it will have an impact on us, and we can't escape that impact. All we can do is ensure that as we frame our budget and we manage the economy over the next 12 months, we're managing as best we can and ensuring that we're not making a bad situation worse.
If the IMF is predicting as well that unemployment will peak at 3.7%, what's a worst case scenario that you've got in your mind at the moment? Where would that increase to?
Look, unemployment in Australia is at an all-time low, and we still have stories every day of employers saying they can't get the staff that they need. So we are in a relatively good situation as far as the labour market goes. No reason to be complacent. And as inflation rises around the world and the economy slows around the world, as I've already said, that will have an impact on Australia's growth forecast. But at the moment, we are in a relatively good position. We just cannot be complacent about those numbers because we will be impacted by the international outlook.
OK, well, it's interesting that you say that we are in a relatively good position at the moment, because Jim Chalmers often talks about the storm clouds. Is he and your government in danger of talking the economy down too much, or so much that it affects business confidence?
Look, we've just got to be straight and honest with the Australian people and say, look, if we've got monetary policy tightening at the fastest rate ever around the world, reserve banks shifting up their interest rates, the Reserve Bank here in Australia determined to bring down inflation and get it back to a manageable rate, that's going to have an impact on the economy. And on top of that, if our major trading partners look like they're sliding into recession, then that is going to have an impact on Australia as well. All I'm saying is this, that we are in a relatively good position compared to a lot of our other trading partners with strong employment at the moment, but we can't expect that to persist forever. And as we go into the end of this year, beginning of the next year, some of those international trends are going to start to impact on us here in Australia.
OK, and that brings me to energy now. We are expecting pretty serious price spikes, according to Alinta, next year. Can Australians still expect a $275 saving on their annual energy bill?
Look, we stand by the policies that we took to the last election, which will undoubtedly ensure that we bring downward pressure on energy prices. But the situation we face, Pete, is as simple as this. Nobody could have predicted the war in the Ukraine, which is going to have the impact on coal and gas prices, which are impacting our domestic electricity prices, but also this, and this is something we'd been warning about for a decade. Over the last 10 years, we saw 4 gigawatts of energy generation capacity leave the market under the former government's watch, only to be replaced by 1 gigawatt of new energy coming into the market. That is what we are facing now, the result of 10 years of essentially a capital strike. We can't turn that around overnight, but policy certainty will, and we are turning our mind to what we can do in addition to what we've already announced to put downward pressure on those energy prices.
It sounds like you're walking away from that pledge.
Not walking away from our policies, in fact, determined more than ever to implement them, because we know that rewiring the nation, accelerating the transition to clean energy is the only way we are going to bring downward pressure on the energy prices.
So people will still see that savings.
We've got to be straight with Australians. We've got to do that. We have got to bring down, we have got to do that transition, Pete. And our modelling, the modelling done by Reputex, best modelling firm in energy in the country, well regarded by international standards, modelled the situation as we knew it. Obviously couldn't have anticipated the war in the Ukraine and the impact that's having on energy prices right now. But we know that the policies we are implementing are the only way we're going to turn energy prices
So
down.
is that to say if that modelling changes, then your pledge changes?
Well, if the whole world changes, Pete, if the whole world changes, of course that's going to have an impact on energy prices and the economy and everything. So nobody predicted that we were going to have a prolonged war in the Ukraine, which is going to impact on gas prices, on coal prices, on petrol prices, on the price of all the energy inputs.
Okay.
Couldn't have known it. Couldn't have been included in the modelling because it wasn't known back then. But what we do know and what we stand by is the only way to bring energy prices down over the long term is to transform and get more generation into the system, something that the Coalition failed at for 10 years.
Just a final one here, Stephen. Before the election, Labor claimed a policy to increase fines under the Competition and Consumer Act that would raise $557 million. Treasurer's costing has found that to only raise a fraction of that at $63 million. How do you explain that discrepancy?
Look, before the election, we based all of those costings were modelled by the Parliamentary Budget Office, so done at arm's length from Labor in opposition. So the Independent Parliamentary Budget Office costed all of those. We put all of those costings out. If there were errors in the methodology by the Parliamentary Budget Office, then we've got to wear that, obviously. It's regrettable, but we've got to wear that, and we've got to find other areas to ensure that those savings are made up. But the underlying policy is right, I've got to say. The underlying policy, Pete, of ensuring that if businesses out there are whacking consumers and acting unfairly and breaching Australian consumer law, then there should be penalties on them which represent the magnitude of those breaches of the law. That's in consumers' interests, and we stand by those policies.
Stephen Jones, appreciate your time as always. Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.